If you've ever found a beautiful stone on the ground and wondered, can I make money with this beautiful rock? Can you sell a random rock you found in nature? What if you do sell it? Where and to whom should you sell it? And how would you even know which stone to sell? Well, if you've ever thought about this or have these doubts, then this video is for you. But first of all, you should know that you're not the only one, because many people around the world have this question and ask it in the comments of the videos here on the channel. You can even tell us what country you're from in the comments. And in case you didn't know, you can make money with precious, semi-precious industrial and mineral stones. So I'm sure after this video, you'll be a little more interested in the stones you find out there. But do you already know all these possibilities? Aren't you missing an opportunity to change your life? Are you ignoring rocks and minerals that you don't know have value? Or maybe you're missing out on a new source of income right under your nose. So first of all, I'm going to show you all the ways you can make money from gems and minerals. All the tips I'm going to give you today are very important, but the last one will complement them all, so pay close attention. Because from now on, you'll learn how to make money from stones, whether they're valuable or not. These are 10 quick tips on how to make money with rocks. Many people are finding many interesting and valuable minerals in nature, and this has resulted in new sources of income for these people who used to collect stones just as a hobby and now make a living from it. So come on, let's learn how to make money with rocks. The first step in making money from gems would be to find and sell gems directly. In practice, this means that you have to engage in the activity of mining or collecting gemstones, whether you are an amateur or a professional, which requires a bit of luck combined with a certain level of knowledge. In other words, while it's possible, you can't become a gem prospector overnight. You have to learn how and where to find these stones and practice these techniques by collecting them in the wild. And because I know that many people have difficulty identifying the stones they find, at the end of this video, you can watch the previous videos where you will learn how to identify your stones with examples. But now it's important for you to know that with the right knowledge, you can find many valuable stones in nature and make a good living from them. The second step would be to look for semi-precious stones in nature and sell them directly. Here the rule is the same as for precious stones, except that semi-precious stones have a much greater variety, both in quantity and types. And as a consequence, this variety ends up being reflected in the prices. When it comes to semi-precious stones, you can find everything from moderately priced stones to cheaper ones. However, because semi-precious stones are much easier to find, you can make more money from them by selling them in larger quantities. So now I'm going to show you the stones you can find without too much effort. You'll probably find many stones from the quartz family if you take a closer look while walking along the banks of a river or waterfall in nature. If you're paying attention, you're sure to find some semi-precious stones. Again, you'll need a little more knowledge to identify the stone so that you know how to sell the semi-precious stone you find. But it's a practice that requires more practical knowledge. In addition, you can practice finding and selling stones directly with stones of lower value to find more buyers. Here we can include practically any type of stone, as long as you have the necessary quantity and there are people interested in the stones you want to sell. You could be in a river, for example, and sort out some black pebbles, some that are gray, some that are brown, some that are yellow, and sell them as handicrafts, not really caring what kind of stone they are. This is a very practical and inexpensive way of doing things. It just takes a little patience, but if you want it, it's enough to keep up this cool hobby that keeps you in touch with nature and also helps you make some money from the stones. Another very important point that many people ask me about, and this may be the case with you, don't the rocks have to be legally registered? What are the rules? How do you find a buyer? And how do you sell them for the right price? We'll get to that in the end. Before that, you need to understand other points about how to sell a stone. In case you didn't know, no one here on the internet mentions that you can make a lot of money from industrial minerals. Most people talk about finding a big, beautiful diamond or a lot of gold. But there are some minerals that have a high industrial value and need to be extracted in large quantities. But usually the difficulty is that they require machinery and manpower. In other words, a company needs to go there to remove these minerals. But the secret here is that you don't have to be an entrepreneur or have big mining machines. Today, there are many people who learn to identify these deposits and do a whole analysis of the site, identifying potential deposits and the amount of ore, and then sell this information about the site and the deposit to companies. And that's not all. There are other interesting ways to make money from rocks. In this case, you can sell stones as a middleman. I know I've probably got you all confused right now, but basically this is a way to make good money with stones, where you can venture into selling rare, high-quality gemstones as well as semi-precious stones. However, you need to have some knowledge of the local market and be able to identify the stones you want to sell. A middleman buys them and then resells them for a profit. And if you think it's too complicated for you, you should know that middlemen are the professionals who make the most money from stones all over the world. The only skill you'll need to develop is your knowledge of gemology, because in this case, you'll need to have a minimum knowledge of gemstones. So you'll need to study a little more to know the values of the type of stone you want to trade, as well as negotiation techniques to maximize your profit margins. But if you find this too complicated, don't worry. There is another very interesting and cool method you can use to make money with stones, and that is by cutting them. Here's a good way to make money from stones, which is to take raw stones and turn them into polished stones. Of course, it depends on the kind of cutting you want to do. If it's a simple job that just requires polishing the stone, you can start without any difficulty. But if you want to cut faceted jewelry, it will require a certain amount of study, more in-depth knowledge, and some special equipment for cutting gemstones, which can cost more than $3,000, depending on the machinery you buy. But like any other profession out there, it's possible to get started with very little investment, with cheaper and more accessible tools. Because even though cutting is a more laborious process, a stone once cut can be worth 5 to 10 times more than it was in its raw state. So I can say that despite the investment you have to make, if you want to become a professional in this field, it certainly pays off. Another very interesting way to make a lot of money with gemstones is to make jewelry. Many people buy cut gemstones that are ready to be set into jewelry and then make jewelry out of gold, silver, steel, plated pieces, and even alternative materials like copper and macrame. It doesn't necessarily have to be very expensive gemstones. Anything from expensive gemstones to cheaper semi-precious stones will work. There are also people who just resell finished jewelry, buying it from people who make it wholesale and then reselling it at a higher price. That's another way to make money with stones that works very well. Another interesting option that you may not be aware of is investment. There are people who buy gemstones, sometimes rough but mostly cut, to hold as a financial asset. And if the stones are certified, it's even better because it's possible to pledge them with various investment brokers. We're even going to make a video later on explaining how these pawn shops work, which many of you have asked us about. But the idea here is basically to buy some stones, store them, and then resell them for a profit. In some countries, it is necessary to get permission from the local government, and this raises a lot of questions. Do I need a government permit, or can I sell freely? Normally, permits are only required for large-scale mining, which is not the case for most prospectors. But keep an eye out because depending on the laws of the state you're in, you may need a prospecting or mining permit. When in doubt, check with your local government. And of course, if you're buying and selling, you'll have to pay the appropriate taxes. Buying with an invoice and reselling with an invoice can be a safety measure to avoid problems later. But don't worry if you're just starting out and this is a hobby for you and you want to make some money. You don't have to worry about that right now. You can sell the stones you find with just the right appeal in small quantities without destroying nature, especially for sale on websites. But now I want you to forget the distractions around you for a few seconds and imagine with me that you're walking around your grandfather's farm in a rural area with rivers in the middle of nature. In that moment, you remember the things you learned in this video, and you immediately start looking at the ground around you until you find a beautiful blue-green stone, or maybe red with lots of different colors. Either way, it's a very beautiful stone, so you think, maybe I could make some money selling this stone, but is anyone interested in buying it from me? But after a little thought, another question comes up. How am I going to do that if I don't even know what this stone is? Well, this happens a lot. And the truth is that many real stones, if they were precious stones for mining, You would need a government permit to explore an area and everything else depending on the country you're from and the amount of stones you find. Here on the channel, there are many videos that talk about this issue of exploration, how to identify more specific types of stones like diamonds, which I'll even leave a shortcut for you to watch at the end of the video. In this case, we're talking about something more casual, more simple, that if you find an interesting stone out there, maybe you can make some extra money to support this hobby, to pay for the gas for the trip, or things like that. A hobby that is very interesting, by the way, and gives us a wonderful contact with nature, and I don't know if that's the case for you. Many of the subscribers to our channel find very beautiful stones in nature, including rubies and diamonds of the highest quality. Some of them sell these gems and make good money. And before the haters say I'm encouraging people to look for diamonds in their backyards, I'm not saying you're going to get rich overnight with the stones you find, but it is possible, and it can happen if you find the right stone. As my late grandfather used to say, the son who seeks finds. Now you need to understand how to do this, and the first step I always recommend, of course, is to identify the stone you want to sell, or at least the type of stone you find, for two main reasons. The first is so that you don't ask too high a price that is incompatible with selling that piece, because then you don't end up offering a very high quality stone for a very cheap price. To do that, you must know the stones, and unfortunately, there's no way around it. That's why I always talk about our Gemology for Beginners book, which is always available at the link in the video description. It's a perfect book for anyone who wants to start learning how to identify gemstones. Because it's a digital book, you get all the updates for free, and you don't have to wait for them to come to your house, so you have access to quality content with hands-on testing no matter where you live. There's nothing better on the internet for that price. But in practice, most of these stones that we find in the ground without digging, practically or semi-rounded, will usually be from the quartz family. And I can guarantee this because there are a large number of stones in the quartz family. The appearance of each mineral is related to its chemical structure. For example, quartz crystals form hexagons with 6 sides, and they usually form a pyramid at the top. This shape is very common in nature and in different sizes. You can also find jasper, agate, chalcedony, petrified wood, quartzite of different colors, and they all belong to the giant quartz family, although they are very different stones with different market values. To sell these stones, you must learn to separate them. There are usually 2 basic uses for a stone. The first is a stone that will serve as a collection, which means it will serve or be beautiful in its raw state as you found it. Or if it's broken, that fragment of the stone, if it's beautiful on its own, doesn't need to be cut. The value is in the beauty of the piece or the rarity of it as it was found in nature. The second purpose of interest for sale is to make handicrafts or for cutting, where the jeweler will transform rough gemstones into more expensive jewelry, depending on the level of cutting. So you have to keep this in mind. Knowing that, you can have an idea that stones with a more vivid color, or those that are more crystalline, will be more interesting for making jewelry because they will look more beautiful. And stones that have that distinctive look that aren't worth breaking to cut will be more suitable for collecting. Of course, this is not all there is to it. There are other subtopics to talk about, but for now, knowing this much will help you a lot. You'll have to take these stones and sort out which stones you find would make good collector stones and which stones would make good lapidary stones. You're also going to sort them by color: white stones, black stones, green stones, red stones. Sort by color, sort by type, even if you don't know the stone, because then it will be easier for you to identify it. We've made several videos here on the channel about identifying stones by color that will help you identify your stones. Once you've sorted them out, you need to take good pictures of your stones and advertise them on the sales channels. The one I recommend the most is Amazon, but you can also advertise on the Facebook Marketplace. Believe me, there's always someone interested in buying the stones you find in your area. What may be commonplace for you may be a rarity for people from other regions, from the United States. For example, this stone here is a jasper, which is found in many rivers around the world. A jasper or petrified wood stone like this might be worth $10, $20, $40 a piece if you wanted to sell it by the piece. But imagine if you had a large property You could have several of these stones spread out over a large area, making it much easier to have several available to give away. You can have a scale to sell your stones by weight. You can also define your stones by their appearance and the reality of their beauty. Some stones have a brighter, more intense color and are harder to find, and they may have a slightly higher value. You can also sort stones by kilograms. This is a good tip for selling stones by the kilo, especially for cutting and crafting. For example, you can separate several small black stones, several carnelian agates, the orange kind you find in rivers. You can sort these stones as you would sort beans by type. Think of the sorting first, and then think of the value of the stones. And to advertise on the internet, which I always recommend, learn to take good pictures of your stones. Take good, clear photos with a white background so people can see the details of the stone. Don't put light behind the stone or use the camera's flash. The best light is ambient daylight. Take photos outdoors, holding the stone in your hand with some grass in the background. The important thing is to show the details of the stones. And in the description, you need to talk about the characteristics of your stone, such as weight, size in centimeters, color, and any other details you notice about the stone. There's no point in trying to sell a stone if you don't know exactly what it is. So if you still don't know or are unfamiliar with the type of stone, I suggest you keep watching our videos here on the channel. Buy the book, Gemology for Beginners, while it's still available, and start identifying stones in nature. At this point, you really need to put in a little effort on your own. You really have to start learning, because all the tips are already there. The first step by step, the way to sell a stone you found is this. But the great thing about a lack of knowledge is that a person can end up selling a stone, or trying to sell a stone, for far less than it's worth. Meteorites are a fascinating example of how something seemingly ordinary can hide extraordinary value.
With a theme like, I think already you can see a few of the phases in there. It's already starting to etch nicely.
Often these space rocks go unnoticed because of their unattractive appearance and can be mistaken for ordinary terrestrial rocks. However, when properly identified, meteorites can be extremely valuable, not only for their scientific potential, but also for their commercial value. These fragments of space can contain vital information about the history of the solar system and even life in the universe. So while they may seem insignificant at first glance, meteorites are a powerful reminder that true value often lies beyond the surface. So we need to pay a little attention to these details. If you're new to the channel, follow us now to learn a little more. You can't learn overnight, it's a process, but you will learn a little more every day. This subject is very cool, it's interesting, and once you learn how to identify rocks in nature, it's addictive. Many people discover that they like looking for rocks in nature after learning and end up creating this hobby. You should know that the rock market is one of the biggest money makers in the world. And even if you work as a craftsman, you can make a lot of money just by collecting stones without harming nature. And you also have the chance to support a hobby by making a little money and even turn it into a source of income, especially if you find a very large and colorful diamond, in which case you can be sure that your retirement will be guaranteed. And if you want to know how to identify diamonds, just watch this video. Thanks for liking and subscribing. Good luck, gem hunters!